Marcus Whitmore never imagined that the person who would destroy his life would be someone who shared his childhood memories, his parents' love, and his own blood. For 58 years, Marcus had been the steady one, the reliable older brother who worked hard, saved carefully, and built a life brick by brick. He owned a modest home in the suburbs, had raised 2 wonderful children who now lived in different states, and after his wife passed 3 years ago, he found himself alone but not lonely. He had his routines, his woodworking, hobby, and his brother Daniel. Daniel was 2 years younger, always the charming one with the easy smile and quick jokes. While Marcus had spent decades as an accountant, Daniel drifted through various jobs, never quite settling. But Marcus never judged. Family was family. When Daniel showed up at his door 6 months ago, saying he needed a place to stay after his latest business venture fell through, Marcus opened his home without hesitation. "Just until I get back on my feet," Daniel had promised, that familiar grin spreading across his face. Marcus believed him. Why wouldn't he? This was Daniel, the boy who used to share a bunk bed with him, who had been his best man at his wedding, who had held Marcus when their mother died 5 years ago. The first few months went smoothly enough. Daniel helped around the house, cooked dinner occasionally, and they would sit on the back porch in the evenings, drinking coffee and talking about the old days. Marcus even thought having Daniel around had helped fill the silence that had grown so heavy after losing his wife, Margaret. But then small things started happening. Marcus would misplace his wallet, finding it later in odd places. His car keys would disappear. Once, he could have sworn he had $200 in his dresser drawer, but when he looked again, there was only $80. He blamed his aging memory, the stress of retirement, the fog of grief that still sometimes clouded his thinking. Then came that Tuesday night in October. Marcus had mentioned to Daniel over breakfast that he had an appointment with his financial advisor the next morning to discuss his retirement accounts and the life insurance policy he had received after Margaret's death. It was a substantial amount, money he planned to divide between his children and use to secure his final years. "Just making sure everything is in order," Marcus had said. "At our age, you never know." Daniel had nodded, seemingly disinterested, scrolling through his phone. That evening, Marcus went to bed early. He had been feeling unusually tired lately, though he attributed it to the changing seasons. He fell asleep quickly, deeply, more deeply than usual. He woke to voices. Groggy and disoriented, Marcus checked his bedside clock. 2:15 in the morning. The voices were coming from downstairs, from his study. One was definitely Daniel's voice, but there was another man, someone Marcus didn't recognize. Something felt wrong, very wrong. Marcus quietly got out of bed, his heart beginning to pound in a way that made him worry about his blood pressure. He crept down the hallway, each step careful and measured. The door to his study was slightly ajar, light spilling out into the dark hallway. "Are you absolutely sure he won't wake up?" the unfamiliar voice asked. "Positive," Daniel replied. "I've been putting it in his evening tea for weeks now. Just a light sedative, nothing that would show up if anyone checked. He thinks he's just tired from getting older." Marcus felt his legs nearly give out beneath him, the exhaustion, the deep sleeps. Daniel had been drugging him. "And you're certain the new will is ready?" the stranger asked. "Right here," Daniel said. Marcus heard papers rustling. "It looks perfect. Exactly like his handwriting. I've been practicing for months. Tomorrow morning, after his meeting with a financial advisor, I'll make sure this replaces the real one in his files. Everything comes to me as his only living relative who's been taking care of him in his declining mental state." "What about his kids?" "They barely visit," Daniel said, and Marcus could hear the coldness in his brother's voice now, something he had never noticed before. "They won't contest it. And by the time anyone realizes anything is wrong, I'll be long gone with the money." Marcus stood frozen in the hallway, his entire world crumbling. This was Daniel, his baby brother, the boy he had protected from bullies in school, the teenager he had lent money to for his first car, the man he had trusted with his life. What if he wakes up early or something goes wrong? The stranger pressed. There was a long pause. When Daniel spoke again, his voice was so quiet Marcus had to strain to hear it. Then we moved to Plan B. A man his age, living alone, grieving his wife, a little too much sleeping medication, a tragic accident. Who would question it? The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. His own brother was planning to either rob him or kill him. For several long moments, Marcus couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Then survival instinct kicked in. Quietly, carefully, he backed away from the door and returned to his bedroom. His hands shook as he grabbed his phone and keys. He didn't pack anything, didn't take the time. He just needed to get out. He slipped out through the back door, the same door he and Daniel had used as boys sneaking out for adventures. Now he was sneaking out to save his own life. Marcus drove to his daughter Sarah's house 3 towns away. When she opened the door at 3 a.m. to find her father standing there, pale and shaking, she immediately pulled him inside. The next few days were a blur of police reports, investigations, and heartbreak. When the officers searched Marcus's home, they found everything: the forged will, the sedatives Daniel had been using, records of debts Daniel owed to dangerous people. His brother had been planning this for months, maybe longer, seeing Marcus not as family but as a solution to his financial problems. Daniel was arrested along with his accomplice. At the police station, as they led him away in handcuffs, Daniel had looked at Marcus one last time. There was no remorse in his eyes, only anger at being caught. "You weren't supposed to wake up," Daniel said. "You ruined everything." Those were the last words Marcus heard from his brother. Now, 6 months later, Marcus sat in Sarah's guest room, which had become his new home. He was safe, surrounded by family who truly loved him, but something inside him had broken that night. The trust he had carried his entire life, the belief in the goodness of family had shattered. His son Michael had flown in last week to visit. Over dinner, Marcus had finally been able to talk about it. "How do you trust anyone after something like this?" Marcus asked. "If your own brother can betray you, what does that say about the world?" Michael had taken his father's hand. "It doesn't say anything about the world, Dad. It says something about Daniel. You did nothing wrong by trusting him. Your capacity for love and trust, that's not a weakness. That's what makes you who you are." "But I was a fool," Marcus said quietly. "No," Sarah interjected firmly. "You were a good brother. You were a good man. You still are. What Daniel did, that's on him, not you." Marcus wanted to believe them. Some days he could. Other days the betrayal felt so raw he could barely breathe. He learned through the legal proceedings that Daniel had been planning this for over a year, accumulating debts, making promises to people he couldn't pay back. Marcus hadn't been a brother to him, just an opportunity, a target, a means to an end. The hardest part wasn't the money or even the danger he had been in. It was grieving someone who was still alive. Daniel was in prison now, facing charges of attempted fraud, conspiracy, and attempted harm. But to Marcus, his brother had died that Tuesday night in October. The Daniel he had known, or thought he had known, was gone. Maybe he had never existed at all. But slowly, very slowly, Marcus was rebuilding. He was learning that betrayal by one person didn't mean everyone would betray him. His children's love was real. His late wife's love had been real. There was still goodness in the world. On quiet evenings, Marcus sometimes sat on Sarah's porch and thought about the brother he had lost, mourning not just the betrayal, but all the years they had shared that now felt like lies. But he also thought about the family who had stood by him, the daughter who opened her home, the son who flew across the country, the grandchildren who made him smile again. Trust, Marcus had learned, wasn't about never being hurt. It was about knowing that love was worth the risk, even when someone proved unworthy of it. He had trusted his own brother until one night changed everything. But that night hadn't just revealed betrayal. It had also revealed who truly loved him, and reminded him that family wasn't just about blood. It was about who stood by you when everything fell apart. And for that truth, painful as the journey had been, Marcus found himself grateful. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to hear more stories that matter. Leave a comment below about your thoughts or your own experiences with family and trust. Your engagement helps us continue bringing you meaningful stories that resonate with real life.